Hey, welcome back everyone to the Progression Brothers podcast. This is episode 68. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Progression Brothers podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Renaissance Man.
Hey, welcome back everyone.
Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter at brothers_podcast. So today's topic is Kamala could potentially replace Biden before 2024. A lot of speculation, pontification about whether or not Biden would step down and Kamala would take over before 2024. What's your thoughts on this, Renaissance?
From my understanding, I've never really heard any legitimacy to it other than people on the right, really didn't like the Harris pick, as well as people in the manosphere, who sort of saw, Joe Biden is essentially a Trojan horse to Kamala Harris. To me, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, one thing, if you study Joe Biden's history, you know how many times he's attempted to run for president, how much he's wanted to run for president and win. It's just been something he has really sought out his entire career, taking a lot of lumps on the chin to get to this point. And I just don't see him, walking away from that, voluntarily or for whatever reason people are speculating for. It just doesn't line up. And especially when you look at someone like Harris, she's not she's pretty divisive. Like when you look at how she's polling amongst people who are black versus how she's polling amongst people who are white, her polling's pretty negative amongst people who are white. And the thing is, a lot of people who, Roland Martin was talking about this, and he was essentially saying, well, look what's been put on her plate. You're dealing with unpopular things like, the border and the immigration crisis. You're going to have to go and help with the whole Gavin Newsom situation, which, it sounds like he's going to survive the whole recall, as well as she's been dealing with COVID as well. So, I mean, she's been sort of dealt with these really tough sort of situations that, aren't going to look good. And you could maybe even argue that that's been done by Biden in a strategic sense, in the sense that she doesn't upstage him. So to me, it's just, I don't see it lining up because, if it was something that they were planning on doing, there would have been a lot more strategy in how, they went about, championing her and putting her in a position to, succeed in a sense.
The question has been about whether or not health-wise Biden can actually, stay in office until 2024. I'm not seeing any sort of health care, conditions that would prevent him from being, in that position until 2024. I mean, people will say like, well, he's 78 years old. I'm like, well, Nancy Pelosi is about 81 herself. She seems to get around just fine. I don't see why a guy who's 78 going on 79 would suddenly be incapable of maintaining the political order of the country. I mean, you have older people in office. How old is Mitch McConnell? Mitch McConnell's about in his 70s too.
The other thing with that too is, I would figure when you start listing those people, or you just listing being someone that age in general, if anything, the presidency would be probably one of the better places you could be. Like, I mean, yeah, it's stressful, but you're going to have access to the best doctors. You got Walter Reed right down the street. Whatever food you want, Trump ate McDonald's all the time, but, essentially, you got access now to the best of food and whatever you choose that can, be put on this diet to optimize things. I mean, to me, if anything, like I said, besides the stress, if anything, this will be a sort of a life preserver, because just like I said, all the services you're going to have at your disposal versus if you're just a normal 80-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, and COVID has kind of given him a buffer in between him actually having to travel as far as he needs to, in consideration of what Trump had to go through, right? Trump was going anywhere and anywhere possible, whether it's to meet, the leader of North Korea, or going to meet Putin in Helsinki. He was going to Japan, he was going to this place and that place, he was meeting with different sort of dignitaries, but Biden doesn't really have to do all that during the pandemic. He gets to kind of, I guess, do everything at a distance. He can be a Zoom president, so to speak, right? He can operate through Zoom and doesn't really need to be any and everywhere like Trump was. And I think that kind of is a saving grace for him. If they want to say that, well, his health condition prevents him from, staying in office, well, he's not really traveling that far. So what would be the underlying condition that would prevent him from being in there into 2024? I mean, he's pretty healthy from what it sounds like. I mean, okay, he stutters, he enunciates a couple of different words and whatnot, and it's like, yeah, I've seen people half his age do the same exact thing. I don't see why that would be, a mark against him when it comes to being in a leadership position until 2024.
Well, Mike, he tripped down the stairs going down Air Force One. I mean, that's got to be an issue, right? It's like,
yeah.
Oh gosh, I mean, he's been going back to Delaware. I've read, very often. So he's not even staying in D.C. He's out riding his bike with his wife out in Delaware. So I mean, and like you said, he got. Not only did he not have to do the presidency, he's been able to do that. He got to do what you could argue this is probably even worse is campaigning. The guy got to pretty much do his whole 2020 campaign from his basement, Zoom, because of the pandemic. So, I mean, you didn't even have that strain put on him. So, like you said, you've had some trips overseas. You had a trip down to Louisiana to go and, assess the damage. Mm-hmm. But I mean, like you said, Americans, are in the middle of a pandemic and you got people refusing to be vaccinated, then barring people. So, like I said, foreign travel is cut down. So, I mean, it's really waking up and walking across the White House lawn to your office and being in meetings all day.
Yeah, I some people say, well, he's nodding off, on camera. And I'm like, sometimes people close their eyes just to, for their own personal reason. It's not like he's taking a nap and he's snoring. I don't see where is this coming from? It's not like he has sleep apnea or something like that. No, that's not what's going on with Biden. I'm sorry. That's not, people are just over exaggerating his condition, health-wise, and his posture as a president. And I'm saying, do you really think that if Trump stayed in office that he wouldn't be taking a few naps himself? I mean,
oh man, I mean, Trump probably. I mean, like I said, Trump may not be taking naps, but once again, this is the same guy who's not probably working too hard as president either. I mean, like I said, the guy, after he lost, he stopped even pretending to care about the pandemic and didn't even have meetings and, was out golfing. So, I mean, that's how hard Trump was really working in the midst of all this is up for debate in and of itself, And Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say he had a lot of help from his daughter and Jared Kushner. They did a lot of heavy lifting, foreign policy-wise and domestically, on how to engage and who to engage with. And his son Eric and Donald Trump, Jr. Did some heavy lifting on the campaign trail for him. So I'm not sure if we can put let Trump off the hook when it comes to performance, because he can get on stage and be energetic. Anybody who keeps drinking Red Bulls and other sort of sodas and carbonated sodas and drinks and things like that, they're gonna be pretty whipped up. But to say that Biden, he kind of nodded off in an interview or something like that, that's not an indication of he needs to be replaced by Kamala. I just don't see how that's the case.
Maybe he needs to start playing YMCA all the time like Trump.
No, that's true. He does seem to really like the Village People. So,
no, I just associate people with this talking point. I look at it the same light of, when did they say Trump was coming back into office? What, like August 18th or something like that? And now, I've heard September 20th, there's some sort of protest or something. Yeah, I put it in that same thing.
Yeah, I don't see Biden going anywhere. I think he's pretty well situated as the president for the foreseeable future. I think the only thing that would make him step down is if there was some kind of death in his family or something to that extent. But I don't see that happening at this current juncture. I don't see Kamala looking to be the president either. She doesn't seem to be all that enthusiastic about being the VP at this point. She's kind of just doing her job and bidding her time. But if you really think about Kamala in comparison to Mike Pence wasn't all that active and vocal either.
Oh no, he was pretty much like just there, and then occasionally might do some things that wouldn't upstage Trump. So I mean, like I said, it's the same thing there. Which I mean, that's kind of what your VP is supposed to do in that sense. But I mean, to me, like I said, it makes no sense. I don't really, like I said, I don't see it happening at all. It's the same people I've heard, after the whole Afghanistan withdrawal, people were talking about trying to invoke the 25th Amendment on Biden then. Like, these are the people these are the people who are really floating this stuff, or like, oh, I believe it was Marsha Blackburn or someone was saying they need to impeach him. It's like, it's along that same line of thinking. Like, I don't see anything happening to Biden. He's going to be there until 2024, which I mean, I don't see him running for president again. I will say that, but I don't see him leaving office here early either. And I certainly wouldn't see it being done to they somehow want to put Kamala in power.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to end it. Like, share, and subscribe. Also, make sure you follow us on Twitter at brothers_podcast.